that's assigned the Boston Red Sox again. Of course, they win the World Series again, and guess what? I get another picture in the cockpit holding the World Series trophy twice in a row.
Welcome back to another edition of The Vault. I'm Adam Merlin, president of Merlin Auto Group, and we are joined today by a very good friend, became a fast friend, Captain Kevin Wendelburg.
Very fast friend, yes. Funny story, you may have heard it before, but I came in one day kind of hot and bothered on my way to work. I'd heard about Adam, online through the internet, and he had tons of great reviews, and I was interested in buying a Ferrari, of course, and he's the guy in Atlanta. So after reading the reviews and just kind of doing some due diligence, I swung by on my way to the airport. I live down in Noonan. It's just a little bit of a trek up here to the north side of Atlanta. So piece of cake on the way to the airport to make an excuse to come visit Adam. And I showed up on the doorstep, and he's an avid pilot. I think we'll talk some airplanes later, but he invited me in and gracious enough to show me around the shop, which is absolutely amazing.
No, actually what happened was I get a call from the receptionist, like, there's a guy named Kevin here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he wants to see you. And I look in the camera, and I'm like, whoa, he's wearing like a pilot like get up.
My daughter calls it my costume.
Yeah.
Dad's wearing his costume today.
So either he's in a costume or like he's a legit pilot. And I was like, well, yeah, I'll be right there. I'll come talk to him. Come to find out, 757 Captain for Delta, right?
As a matter of fact, yes, and just came in from a trip about an hour ago, and again, rush hour day, 2 o'clock. I thought I'll swing up. We'll do a quick podcast to chat and swing down to noon, and hopefully before traffic. So that's why I'm here, all gussied up in my
So
costume.
The funniest part about it is, like, Kevin's like, I saw your things, the buyer's guide, Ferrari, blah blah, and I'm like, dude, let's talk airplanes.
We can talk airplanes,
right?
too.
Like,
I want to talk cars. But
it was like boom. So like Kevin wants to talk cars. I want to talk airplanes. But we'll start by talking cars.
Okay.
Because when you came to see us, you had identified a one-owner Ferrari Testarossa that you said to me you wanted to buy, A, because you've always wanted one, and B, because you knew it was a good investment. And somebody asked me the other day, it was like, has Kevin wanted a Ferrari like his whole life, or is this like he has a little money, he wants to invest? Like, what sparked that for you?
The poster that I had on my wall when I was 9 years old of the Testarossa and the Countach, right? That every kid had. I was born in 1969, so maybe a little bit older than 8. But anyway, yes, as a kid growing up in school, I just love the look of the Testarossa, and I've wanted one for a while. So that's what, and this wasn't something that happened a year ago or 2 years ago. It's maybe been 10 years. And just kind of looked online, kind of shopping around a little bit, and then I finally found one based up in Chicago. But before I made the trek up there, I wanted some local knowledge, and that's why I stopped by your shop.
So, like, you want one because you want, like, I mean, was it? So, this whole room here is basically because I can justify buying these cars.
Yes.
And own them, but know they're going to be worth more money in the future, right? So, like, I can go home and say, honey, like, I bought Apple stock today, or I bought a 512 BBI, and hopefully we'll see the same appreciation, right? Like, was your Testarossa thing, you want it, you want to drive it, you want your son to enjoy it with you, or was it like, I want to diversify a little bit and put some money in something that's going to appreciate? Like, how much of it is investment and how much of it is like check the box of I had to have one?
It's a good question. It's actually 50-50.
Really?
Believe it or not. I mean, I'm a huge fan of diversification, and I've got some real estate and some airplanes and whatever. But the car, I had a really good friend once who said he had bought a lake house, and we're like, wow, nice place. He goes, listen, you can't water ski behind a mutual fund.
Right.
Right?
I love it.
And there you go. So, yeah, it's an investment. It's absolutely an investment. But I know that I'm going to enjoy my investment. I don't necessarily enjoy looking at a stock portfolio.
Right.
But I know I can enjoy this, and I can take my son out for a ride, which we've already done, and it's awesome. I didn't buy the car to be seen in it.
Right.
I bought it because I like to drive it on a nice day, maybe once a month. And I know over time it'll do fine. So
that's awesome. You can't water ski behind a mutual fund.
Right.
No, listen, it's so true. And I mean, but everybody's programmed, right? Like you invest in mutual funds, you invest in bonds, you invest in securities, right? And, the thing that makes me laugh is like, Elon Musk buys Twitter, sells a bunch of Tesla stock to fund Twitter. Tesla goes from wherever it was to here, right? And you just lost everything, right? Like, there's no way that happens with this Testarossa. And you get to drive it. You get to see it in your garage. Yes, it sucks. You have to insure it. Maintaining it can be a challenge if you don't get the right car, don't know the right people, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, it's like gambling. It's the cost of enjoyment.
That's exactly right.
Right?
And I couldn't agree with you more. And I know as time goes on and as these cars continue to appreciate and as new buyers continue to purchase these cars at a higher and a higher bar, they're not necessarily going to sell those cars at a loss. I'm not going to sell mine. As a matter of fact, I know things, if you buy something today, that doesn't guarantee tomorrow, but I'm not going to sell my car for any less than what I paid for it, and I'm sure I paid a premium, but that's the new bar. And so as we look, 6 years or 10 years or 15 years down the road, as everything inflates, we'll be lucky if I can buy a gallon of milk for what I paid for that car.
No, right.
Right?
And that's the coolest part about these cars, right? Like, so Enzo Ferrari, who is one of my heroes, right? He built a business on the concept of, I will always create one fewer car than the market demands.
Brilliant.
Right? Every other automaker in the world, let's build as many as we can, and and then we have incentives and rebates and finance. Ferraris. There was a time where there was a 3-year waiting list. I don't care who you were to get a new Ferrari, right? So and we all learned it in first grade.
Sure.
It's economics, right?
It's
supply and demand.
Supply and demand, beachfront property. They're not making any more of them. And to your point, Enzo Ferrari. I know just the name Ferrari is epic. It's epic, and I'm not even that much of a car guy. But
so that's what's crazy to me, right? Like, you're not that much of a car guy, but like, you come here and you're like, I found this car. I want you to look at it. I look at it. I've never heard of the dealer, and so immediately I was like, it's probably not worth our time to like really go through the due diligence. And you're like, no, dude, seriously, like. And being a pilot, right? Like, I'm the only pilot in the world that's not very like focused on attention to detail and regimented and checklist and all that stuff. So like, I always make the joke, if you can buy a car from a pilot, you're getting the greatest car ever, right? Like, they have every freaking service. Everything is documented. Every I is dotted. Every T is crossed. So you're like, you really need to look at this car. And I looked at the car and I was like, oh my God, this is like a one-owner car, and it looks to be like brand new.
Well, as you said, the pedigree is there, the checklists are there, the paperwork was there. The only thing that I hadn't seen is the car there. Is the car as perfect as the paperwork is?
Right.
And so when I went up to Chicago to look at, of course, it's perfect. It was perfect. It looks like a brand new car. So I came back, called you, Adam, and just said, hey, this is the real deal. And so took delivery of it and showed up on your doorstep. And then, of course, you went through it.
Right. So then we went through it. We found nothing wrong with it. The car was absolutely, little nitpicky stuff, which you could find with anything. But the coolest part about the whole thing is, right, like this is it. I'm going to keep this car forever, blah, blah. It's got 9,600 miles. I don't want to turn 10,000. Me and my son, we're going to drive it, twice a year, blah, the whole schmear. And next thing I know, I get a text. It's like, hey, did you see that 512 TR on Bring a Trailer?
Yeah, so there's that 50-50. Remember we talked about the 50% enjoyment with my son and the 50% investment? Well, the little investment squirrel's hanging on my shoulder, and he's saying, you really don't want to put 10,000 miles on this car. And I'm thinking, every time I drove it, I just felt guilty, which lessened my enjoyment of the car. And that's my fault. That's not your fault. That's not the car's fault. Fact of the matter is, the car has 9,800 miles on it, and I just have I have a feeling that maybe when it turns 10,000, I I wanted a car under 10,000 miles. So I'm happy keeping it, or maybe even passing it on to another owner. But I found a 512 TR, which, and that was actually here in Atlanta, sounded terrific, had 10,700 miles, so it was kind of over that Mendoza line, that little psychological hurdle. So why not? Now we got a 512 TR, beautiful car, love to drive it. I don't have this psychological issue, which was my issue, nobody else's. And now I have the best of both worlds. So now I can drive the 512, which I do with my son, but I don't necessarily...
So you went from 0 Ferraris to a Testarossa and a 512 TR in a span of 45 days?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so true story. But I love both cars. I mean, they're both phenomenal. They're both perfect. And of course, you know,
now the second one was an acquisition on Bring a Trailer.
It was.
Right?
It was on Bring a Trailer, and I was sitting at a Chick-fil-A on a layover
This is what happens when you're a pilot and you're bored.
Yeah, I was sitting at a Chick-fil-A on a layover in West Palm Beach, and actually I got in. I think the auction closed at like 2 o'clock on a Thursday or something like that. So I rented a car. I was landed in Lauderdale. Rented a car, drove to West Palm to see a 512 TR that was for sale, a local car. So I went and saw it, and I looked at it. I wasn't blown away. Nowhere near as nice as the Testarossa that I bought. And so, and maybe, you know, again, that's a little unfair because that car's perfect. And when you see a perfect car, everything else is just kind of a little bit of a letdown. But that 512 at West Palm was not my car. But the one on Bring a Trailer, the auction closed at 2. I saw that car. I went to a Chick-fil-A, made sure I had a good internet signal, and then, of course, the bidding went back and forth, and I ended up winning that car. So
he calls me up. He's like, "Did you see that?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "That was me." I was like, "Have you lost your mind?"
Yeah. So then I had the issue with, what do I tell my wife?
Right.
And so we had a little discussion there, but yes, I came clean, and we're still happily
she's
married.
Thrilled. Yeah, look, you know.
So, hey,
listen,
you know.
I mean, you know, the first day I met Kevin, he's talking about all the airplanes he's owned and all that stuff. So when he called me, he's like, "Yeah, that was me. I bought that car." I was like, "Oh, okay." So that's like 2 Ferraris in 45 days. But this is the same guy that owns like this airplane, that like your wife's going to be like, she gets it, right?
She gets it, and she knows that. To back what we were saying before, they're all investments,
right.
and the same is true with airplanes. And over time, I've done very well buying and selling airplanes. My buddy and I found a way to identify airplanes maybe in markets that people don't necessarily frequent. I bought airplanes out in Pasco, Washington. I bought airplanes without pictures in weird places that cost a lot of money for people to buy an airline ticket to go do due diligence on a $75,000 airplane. So you're not going to go spend $5,000 on an airline ticket to go look at a $75,000 airplane. You may spend $5,000 on an airline ticket to go look at a $2 million jet, but not for a $75,000 airplane. But we knew that if we brought that $75,000 airplane back to Atlanta, where you can fly
for
every
$500
discounted airline in the world to Atlanta for $500, now all of a sudden you've expanded your market. So that $75,000 airplane is now worth $125,000. And we did that again and again and again. So you bring it back, and I've got friends that are good mechanics, and you paint them and you photograph them and you do what you need to do, and you turn the market. And so and that's not rocket science. Everybody understands what I'm saying. You just have to think a little bit outside the box, and it takes energy.
No, I mean, to me, like, that's like so cool, right? So you know, I love cars, but I love the hunt. I love the chase. I love finding the car. I love the deal. I love buying it at the whatever Washington price, bring it back here and knowing that, like, I can add value to that car.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right? Like, that's what it's all about. Like, and then, you know, add to that I can fulfill, like, my lifetime dream of wanting a Ferrari 308, right? Then it's just like, you know, like, pinch me, right? Like, I wake up every day and it's like, this is the greatest thing in the world, you know? And so,
And to your point, it's the hunt. And so whether you're talking about cars or airplanes or real estate, and you know, find a good deal and fix it up and put in some energy and photograph it well and tell a good story, and anybody can do it. And you don't have to start with expensive cars. You can start with little, you know, buy a car on Craigslist and clean it up and wash the tires and make $100.
Yep.
Right? That's where you start.
Look, you know, so we had Ramsey Potts, who's a good friend of ours. He's part of Haggerty and the Broad Arrow Auction Group. And we were talking about some of the Haggerty, you know, like their top picks for collectability for 2023, right? And there's, you know, $1 million cars, a couple $100,000. And then there's like a $10,000 like Toyota truck, right?
Right.
So it's like, you know, the whole thing is like identify the right car in the right market, right? Buy it right, and then who knows what'll happen for you,
let
right?
Time,
you know?
let time do the heavy lifting.
So like you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a $2 million jet. To your point, it doesn't have to be a $200,000 Ferrari.
Right.
Like, you know, you can buy a $15,000 car, sell it for $20,000. I mean, that's you know 15% appreciation in a very short period of time.
That's exactly right, and it's the thrill of the hunt is really what it is. That's what it is.
No, look, I mean it's the thrill of the hunt, and then it's the people you meet through it.
It is true, and it's a small, as you know with cars, and I know with aviation, and you're in aviation too. It's a small group. It's a tight knit group. You do a good job for someone, and they remember your name, and that's how it works.
So, what's more fun for you, finding the airplane or finding the car?
They're both kind of the same. I mean, the airplane. I mean, aviation's always been my first love, right? So I grew up. I was born in the Philippines and moved to Venezuela. Lived in Caracas for a while, and then in Mexico City. And my mother's Australian, so we'd go back to Australia. So I was always on heavy jets as a kid, as a little boy, and that was kind of what kind of got my interest going in airplanes and the airlines in particular. I always knew I wanted to be an airline pilot, and so I'd play with little toy airplanes and just fascinated by airplanes. And maybe cars go along with that. I don't know. I didn't really I necessarily want to be a race car driver, maybe a little bit dangerous for my taste, but the airplane thing was always fascinating to me. So my first love is airplanes, no question about it. And to find like a cool, like our first one, the one I told you in Pasco, was a Starduster. So a biplane, an open cockpit biplane, we flew it over the Rocky Mountains, right? Who does that? I did it. So, you find the passes, you figure it out. I flew a seaplane, a little single-engine Rotax 912 powered, what they call a Sea Ray, an amphibious, basically a seaplane. Found that out, also out in the Seattle area.
Wait, that Rotax engine, right?
Yeah,
like,
the 912.
That's a pain in the butt.
No, it's a good engine. It's a four-stroke.
But you gotta burp it and this and that.
But
it's like it takes 2 hours to get going.
It's bulletproof. The Rotax engine is bulletproof. All the
Bombardier, right?
It's all the light sport aircraft have these Rotax 912s, 914s, 915s. But this little Sea Ray, literally a little two-person fabric-covered airplane with single-engine Rotax. Taking it out over the Rocky Mountains. You can do it safely.
You have to be a real pilot to want to do that.
You do, but it's just fun. It's part of the adventure. It's part of the experience. My son did a couple legs with me and started logging time. So now I was able to keep my CFI, my flight instructor certificate. So I was his instructor, which was really cool for me to be able to teach my son.
Sure.
So now he's a private pilot. He's at Auburn, loving it and doing some flying. So it's hopefully I've passed the tradition down to him. But the airplane, I think for me is always going to be number one, just because that's what I kind of grew up doing. But I love the cars too. I mean, I really do.
So it's interesting. So I do the cars to make a living.
Right.
Right. The airplanes is something that every time I do it, I pinch myself and I'm like, I can't believe I get to do this.
Right.
Right. So the better I do the cars, the better I get to do the better I get to do the airplanes.
And honestly, I feel the same way, and I think most pilots will tell you that. I mean, I again came in from work this morning. I told you the story. And a little boy comes up into the cockpit, and we took a really cool picture with him and put his little captain hat on his head and gave him a picture. And just it just gives you a good feeling, to kind of pass it on and hopefully have an impact on maybe somebody's career choice in the future. I don't know, but I love flying every day. I mean, it's always different, and I do pinch myself. I mean, there's things that you see up there, and just relationships that you form in the cockpit, because you're stuck with someone for 4-day trip. You're basically tied to the guy. So.
But tell them some of the we've talked about some of your trips, and you're like, yeah, like when the Yankees won the World Series, like we were the charter to like fly them home, and I'm taking selfies with the World Series trophy.
Yeah, I mean when the Boston Red Sox won the World Series for the first time in St. Louis, I was the charter pilot and just couldn't believe it. They'd won the World Series, Curse of the Bambino, the whole thing, and they do their whole champagne celebration and wind up back at the airplane. And next thing I know, the World Series trophy is on my lap. And park and brake set. You take some pictures. I got some great pictures with the World Series trophy. And the funny story, I told you, 4 years later, get called for another charter. Again, it's the Boston Red Sox, and they were playing the Rockies this time out in Colorado. And it was actually on a different airplane. The first one was 757, next one was 76400. I get called out, and I just happened to be of 14,000 Delta pilots. I'm the charter guy that's assigned the Boston Red Sox again. Of course, they win the World Series again, and guess what? I get another picture in the cockpit holding the World Series trophy twice in a row. And so John Henry, funny, the team owner, he's like, man, you must be the good luck charm. I'm like, I guess, man. How the chances of the same guy flying both those World Series flights for the same team.
See, to me, that's way cooler than either of your Ferraris, any of that other stuff, right? That's cool stuff.
It is cool stuff, and there's a lot of stories like that. There really are. I can't even think off the top of my head, but things that you kind of take for granted maybe a little bit because it happens fairly often, believe it or not. I mean, there's weird things that happen. We do a lot of celebrity flying, and you just observe things. And something that might be interesting to a person not involved in the industry may not be quite as interesting to me. But there are things that happen throughout the course of a day, a week, and a month that really are interesting, that would be interesting to other people, I'm sure.
This car, which was your first Ferrari.
Yes.
Right? Did your wife know that you were like, honey, I'm going to take a couple $100,000 of our savings?
We'd talked about it, and...
but to what detail, right? Me and my wife talk about a lot of things that I buy in in big generalities, right?
Well, that's how you stay out of trouble, Adam.
Right. So is it hey, I'm going to go buy this thing, it's worth more than I'm paying? Or is it hey, I'm going to spend a couple $100,000?
Well, I think you have to get away from you can't say I'm going to spend a couple $100,000 on a car. You have to say I'm going to make a $200,000 investment.
Right.
Again, whether you buy Apple stock or a car, and heck, a $200,000 investment in Los Angeles real estate is much different than a $200,000 investment in Noonan, Georgia real estate.
No doubt.
So, it's more of we have some money to invest as opposed to what you're necessarily investing in. But she trusts me, and I've done fairly well in my life in identifying, things that seem to do well. And I don't know why. I think it starts with you have to invest in things that you like. Right. You have to invest in things that you understand. I didn't understand Ferraris, and that's why I came to talk to you. I wasn't going to go buy this car until I talked to somebody. Right. Period. Because I don't know. So you come to the source. So
that's interesting, right? So Warren Buffett, most famous investor, he's famous for knowing how to invest.
Absolutely, understanding what he invests in.
Period. Yeah. And his best advice is invest in things you like, because the odds are somebody else will like them too.
Absolutely.
Right? Period. That's it. You can pay thousands of dollars to go to one of his seminars, but at the end of the day, you leave there, and if your one takeaway is invest in things you like, someone else will like them too. Yep. Right? And so that's kind of the understanding me and my wife have, right? I'm going to buy things I like. I promise you someone else is going to like them at least as much as I do.
Absolutely.
Right? And so it's kind of the same, it's it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean,
well, it is, and you know, I knew I liked the car. I knew every kid my age liked the car because it's on everybody's wall.
Right.
Right. What's not to like? I mean, look at it.
right.
So, but I didn't understand it. I liked it, but I didn't understand it, and that's why we had our little chat. And you graciously spent a lot of time with me. You didn't know me from Adam, but you spent the time with me to make me comfortable. And now I'm a convert.
Right.
So you know, and I
show up in a pilot costume.
but. And that wasn't again, I had a trip that day.
No, that was the funniest part.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I wasn't.
200 people were late to get to Boston that day.
No, nobody was late. Nobody was late. But
we can't say that.
No, nobody was late. But
Right.
we you know, we did some due diligence on this thing, and so now that I'm kind of in this Ferrari world,
Right.
now I'm transfixed with online reading and online videos, and so I'm learning more and more every day because I'm into it now, right? So it always takes that first step, and a lot of people are kind of paralyzed by fear.
That's right.
But I think if you meet people and talk to people, that allays that to a certain degree.
Yeah, no,
right?
I mean, it's called analysis paralysis,
Yes.
right? Like, I can spend enough time. I mean, I do it with airplanes,
Yeah,
right? Like,
right.
I can look at an airplane and I can analyze it to the point where there's no chance I'll ever buy it.
Right.
Right? But, like, at some point, like, sometimes I tell the people here, like, we would have never opened a service department at Merlin Auto Group had I sat down and, like, done, like, a business plan and a model and really figured out what it was going to cost me to build it to get it to the point where we're like, we are the best to service this car, right? Because then I'd be like, oh my God, I don't want to lose that much money.
You and I are exactly the same, and that's. I'm a big picture guy. So,
Right.
you know, I did fairly well in real estate. I had a vacation rental company, and I grew it not because I'm a good business guy. I don't know the first thing about contracts. I don't know nor do I care.
Right.
But I know that when I see a good-looking house, and I know that if I can buy it at a good price, and then I can get people to vacation in the house and help me pay the note down and the taxes and the insurance, you know, over time,
That makes sense.
that property's going to do well.
Right.
And so I'm kind of the big picture, and I put the
Right.
deals together, and next thing I know, you know, I've got the accountants and everybody else saying, well, where are they? I said, well, that'll all come later.
Right.
And that's what my wife does for me.
Right.
She's great at it. She has
Right.
patience of a saint.
Right.
Because I'm all over the place.
Right.
I'm like you. I'm a big picture guy. I see what I like, and I see the possibilities, and I got a ton of energy. But sometimes, you know, just the regulation drives me nuts.
No, and listen. At some point, you just have to, like, jump in, right?
do.
Like
You do.
like, we opened a service department because we had enough Ferraris, and we were tired of paying other people to service our Ferraris. That I was like, we need to find the guy that can service these cars.
Yep.
Right. So then we go out and buy, and like hire the guy, right?
Yep.
Then we have to buy all the machines,
Yep.
buy all the tools, like buy all of this, buy all of that. Hire the next guy. Hire the next guy. Next thing you know, you're like $2.5 million
Yes.
in to this, but it's like, okay, but now
Look what you have.
I can go and buy any Ferrari on the planet, right? On the planet. And I got the people
Right.
that can make sure that's as good a car as. And I mean, put a price tag on that.
You can't, but it takes that jumping off the cliff to get the ball rolling.
That's right.
And it's scary.
It is
and you know,
scary.
there's no guarantees.
No.
There is no guarantees, and that's the thing that, you know, sometimes, you know, when you do well and you know, people see the result, but they don't see the hard work, and they don't see the risk.
That's
the
right.
risk, the hours that it takes behind the scenes. They see the good-looking car,
Right.
but to get a good-looking car, you have to take risks and calculated risks. And when you know, it was a risk for me to buy the car, but you de-risked it for
That's
me
right.
because I came and talked to you.
I was like, don't worry, we got you.
That's right. So
And you're not in this alone.
There you
we'll
go.
be in it
And-
with you.
And so that's my, you know, really my advice to anybody looking, whether you're investing in a car or investing in a house or investing in an airplane or whatever, is go talk to somebody that knows more than you do and find something that you like, something that you're passionate in. And if you do that, you'll be successful because it's just that inner fire is 80% of it, and the rest of it is you know what you can learn and just having the courage to kind of take that first step. But once you're in, it's great. It's a wonderful ride.
So are there other cars on your list, or was it just the Testarossa? Or
no, I mean I've got a 190 SL, a '56, a Mercedes that I love. Right? You didn't know that one. And I've got
where the hell is that?
It's at my house, and this is my favorite, honestly.
This guy's like a hangar full of cars at some airport.
I have a 1976 white Cadillac Eldorado convertible with the Boss Hog Longhorns.
What?
Badass. It's got the big horns.
What?
It is so cool. It's like driving a couch. You're driving a couch. The thing is like 28 feet long. Put a family of 4. It's got 4 doors.
Where do you keep that?
It's actually 2 doors. I keep that at my airstrip.
Wait a minute.
I'll drive that thing up here. That thing is.
We have a '88 Chevy Suburban limo called the Eagle.
Okay.
It has like this huge ass eagle on the front. 5,000 original miles.
Oh my God.
This was bought brand new as a regular Suburban.
Okay.
The guy called DeBryan Coach Builder, which was a huge coach builder. Like Donald Trump's limo was made by these people in 1988.
Right.
And he was like, "You need to make this into a limo." They go, "We don't do SUVs." He goes, "You do now," and made it into this thing.
Yeah.
So like we need like a parade of like your Boss Hog car.
The Boss Hog and the
Wait,
license.
is that for sale?
No, but license plate is B Hog.
It's not for sale at all.
Well, everything's for sale.
Yeah. So I'm a huge Dukes of Hazzard fan.
That's it. I mean, it is a cool.
Where did you get that?
I found it. I think that was an eBay purchase.
How long ago?
6 or 7 years ago. No, but it was.
So this was pre-Ferraris.
This is pre-Ferrari.
So no wonder your wife doesn't care about the Ferraris.
Well,
you bought that thing, and she was like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah,
and then you buy a Ferrari, and she's like, "Okay."
But when I bought it, it didn't have the horns or anything.
You made it Boss Hog's
Yes,
car.
I made it Boss Hog. So it's actually a red Eldorado that's wrapped. I had it wrapped in white. So it's cool. It's a vinyl wrap. So if you like the red, everything's original.
Great.
You take the wrap off, but it's wrapped in white, and I put the horns on it. Badass.
Dude,
It's awesome. I
had
love
no
it.
idea you had that.
Yeah.
You drive that to the airport, like show up for your flight.
No,
like,
don't.
Boom, 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 like outside the little whatever those things are at the airport.
That's a Sunday driver, man. Down to we have a place in Noonan that we like to go eat breakfast, on a Sunday morning
so
after church.
You take that.
We'll cruise to church in it and then load up and go down and so yeah, it's. So
fun. What's next? Are there other cars, or is it airplanes, or is it what's?
Well, I'm working on some more real estate projects overseas. I've got some things going down in St. Lucia and the Bahamas. Yeah.
So depending on how that goes, there'll be other cars.
There will.
What's the
yeah?
scope?
I mean, I think the cars right now. To be honest, the 512 is my dream car. I mean, I just it's such an unbelievable car. I'm sure there'll be additional cars in my future, but the what keeps me going, honestly, what keeps me going is making people happy. I'm a pleaser. I always have been. I'm just a pleaser, and I take with my vacation rental properties. My website is The Great Estates. So if you go to thegreatestates.com, you can see there's a place I have in Oregon near Bandon Dunes. I do a lot of Bandon Dunes golf rentals and I do some people that come, photography and all kinds of stuff because it's beautiful out on the West Coast. It sits up on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific. It's absolutely gorgeous. And then got a place in the Bahamas and a place in St. Lucia that people like to come and vacation. And I take it personally. I want them to have a great time. And so these properties are never complete. Ever. There's always stuff to do. Something needs to be painted or something needs to be cut or whatever. So it's a constant evolution and it takes a lot of my time. I'm fairly hands-on with it, and I employ concierges, personal concierges, that when you go to these houses, you contact them and they basically see to it that you have a wonderful experience.
Gotcha.
So and I'm building on that business still.
So what's the scariest moment you've ever had in an airplane?
Clear air turbulence, no question about it. And people ask me that all the time.
Clear air turbulence.
Clear air turbulence because you can't predict it, and
So explain, I mean, like to people that have no idea what you're talking about, what does that mean?
So when you think about the layers of the atmosphere, a lot of times, if you can kind of picture like a riverbed, and you see the river, which is the air, kind of flowing over the riverbed, and you have a nice flat bottom and everything's smooth, and then the water starts flowing over some rocks, and it starts to burble a little bit, and then you get to the rapids. And that's the mountain waves, or as the jet stream flows out over the mountains, it creates a turbulence. And a lot of times when we have the weather radar on, you can see the turbulence, you can predict it in the form of rain showers or thunderstorms, or activity within the atmosphere that you can see. But a lot of times you can't see it because air is invisible. And if there's no moisture in the atmosphere, it's invisible. And so that creates these turbulent areas. And we were coming back once in the middle of the night from Honolulu, coming into, I don't even remember where it was. It was, I don't know whether it was Salt Lake or going to Cincinnati or something. But we hit a bout of clear air turbulence where literally we had to get about a 10,000 foot block an altitude from the controller, autopilot disconnected, and it's just one of those things I always tell you, don't turn around, hold the wings level, set the power, you disconnect, you just hold the airplane steady. But honest to God, after that experience, and it lasted for maybe 45 seconds, I have a newfound respect for the engineers of Boeing. Let me tell you, these airplanes are not coming apart. They're not coming apart. I can't believe the wing stayed on the airplane. Honest to God. And
10,000 foot
feet.
block.
Yeah.
Meaning he wasn't sure that he could maintain a consistent altitude
within 10,000 feet.
So he asked the controllers for a block of 10,000 feet. Meaning if he was at 35,000, if he went to 25,000, he wasn't going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Because he was going to hit something and it would drop him.
That's exactly right. Yeah, almost uncontrollable. And it's nothing that you can, first of all, so the way Delta does it, when we fly domestically, it's amazing because the reports that the jets send these electronic atmospheric reports to the company, and so now we have what we call a flight weather viewer that predicts the turbulence for us based on the reports and the gyroscopes and the accelerometers on the other airplanes. So we know exactly, like the last guy that was at 35,000 feet 2 minutes in front of me, he's sending data to the company, which is then sending data to my iPad that tells me you can expect chop in 35 seconds. And guess what? In 35 seconds, we get the chop. So the seatbelt sign goes on 20 seconds prior. And we can predict this. But when you're over the Pacific Ocean and you're the only jet out there in the middle of the night because nobody else has been there in the last hour and a half, you're the weather ship.
Wow.
There is no data.
Jeez.
And so you are the guy. And when you have experiences like that, of course, they're terrifying. But what do you do? And I'm not the only pilot that's had something like this, but you asked me the scariest moment, and that was it. Middle of the night, absolutely no warning, and basically a dang near uncontrollable airplane.
Wow.
But we knew what it was. It wasn't anything mechanical. It was totally environmental and nothing that we could see on the radar. And of course, it's pitch black.
So what's your favorite, like, route or airplane or like do you still get excited? Like, it's like, honey, I'm going to Hartsfield. I got like an ATL to JFK. Weather's beautiful. Plane's empty. I get to like hammer it, like climb at 6,000 feet per minute.
So yeah, we do. I mean, it is fun when you do have an empty jet ferry, because these airplanes, 777 for instance, we don't have them anymore, but max takeoff off gross weight on that is 750,000 pounds. And when you take a 777 empty and you ferry it from Kennedy to Atlanta, it's used to a full fuel load because you load up in Johannesburg, South Africa, and you got a 17-hour leg with 295 people or whatever in the back and all the fuel. You put an empty airplane underneath you, it's a rocket ship.
Right.
It's a rocket ship. As a matter of fact, we just flew 2 days ago an empty 757. We took I think it was the Tampa Bay Lightning, picked them up in Tampa 2 days ago, flew the Lightning to Dallas, Love, drop the hockey team off. Then we had to fly an empty 7.5, which has a huge thrust to weight ratio. 757 is powered by 2 Pratt & Whitney dual rotor axial flow turbofans. They're each rated at 37,000 pounds of thrust. So we have basically an empty 757, huge thrust to weight ratio that even the controller said, nice takeoff. And it was. I mean, we zoomed right up to 35,000 feet in 7 minutes or whatever it was.
Holy moly.
Yeah, you stand that thing up on its tail and it wants to go. I mean, it wants to go to the barn.
So is that more fun than like taking your like TR out, or?
It's a different type of fun. I mean, the TR is instant gratification. When you're climbing at 6,000, 7,000, 10,000 feet a minute, you don't have the feeling of the perspective, because you're leaving the ground so quickly that you don't necessarily sense that you're climbing that quickly, right? I mean, you're moving, but it's not like the trees are flying by you on a 2-lane road, going.
See, I tell everybody, like, I would much prefer the airplane experience to the car experience. So it's interesting to me that, like, to you, the car experience is like almost more unique.
Yes.
But that's because you're getting the airplane experience
every day.
Right.
And I drive my car once a month.
That's right.
So it's a little more novel to me in the car. And plus, I get to share the time in the car with, like, my son or my wife. You know.
So that's also a difference, right? Like, I mean, it's all a function of, like, what do you, like...
Right.
Right. Like you do that to eat.
Right.
Every day.
Right. Pilots are great guys. But,
No. But right. It's a lot different to have your son in there, your wife in there. Yeah. But it's it's amazing. Like, in this business, the number of pilots that we've met, like the fact that, like, I'm a pilot, and just that relatability, the commonality, and and just so much of what it is that we do every day.
Yep.
Right. Like, it's the same aspiration, it's the same love for for these machines, for the uniqueness of these machines.
It's a love of machines.
That's what it is.
It is absolutely the truth. It's a love of machines, and it's just amazing, really, where we're at today, and improvements all the time. But man, I'm telling you what, I like the throwback. Yeah,
no, listen, I mean, look at this room, right? Like, the newest car in this room is what? The 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever it is, right? We have an appreciation for...
There, that was my wife. Sorry.
She's like, what the hell are you doing? You buying another one?
Sorry,
listen, I can live with 2. I'm not doing 3.
I know.
Right?
Oh, man.
Well, look, we appreciate Captain.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and like I said, this wouldn't be part of my life, and it's part of my life now without your help, and Ethan's help, and everybody at the shop. So, I really do. I've made friends here, and you guys are welcome to come down to Noonan, fly with us anytime. I've got some buddies that would love to take up. Yeah, we'll do that, and even the air cam. I mean, the air cam is an open cockpit, multi-engine. It's an experimental, almost like an ultralight, but it's really not. It was made by National Geographic. You're familiar with an air cam?
I know.
You will love an air cam. You would love it.
So I'm not, like, crazy about that whole open cockpit thing.
It's phenomenal. You got redundant everything.
I'd rather go in, like, the L39.
Yeah,
right?
we'll go in both.
Like, I like jets, like canopies, like inside parachutes.
The whole thing.
Like, I'm pretty risk averse when it comes to, like, the airplane deal.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, the airplanes I fly are, like, they're like tried and true.
Well, there's old pilots and there's bold pilots. You've heard that? There's old pilots, there's bold pilots, but there's no old, bold pilots.
There you go.
So, there you go. That's why you're still around.
That's right.
Love it.
I'd rather be an old pilot than a bold pilot.
I understand.
Right?
I understand.
Right. Well, we appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe to our podcast, and anything we can do for you, let us know.
Thanks.